Welcome back. We are following breaking news where the fate of the president's sweeping tariff agenda is now in the hands of the Supreme Court. Justice is hearing arguments today on a case challenging the president's International Emergency Economic Powers Act to impose many of those sweeping tariffs. The court's 3 liberal justices pressed Solicitor General John Sauer on whether the president's tariffs are infringing on Congress's authority to impose tariffs. And some of the court's conservative justices expressed skepticism as well, including Justice Neil Gorsuch, a Trump appointee, who challenged the administration over its sweeping view.
All right, so you probably did not expect this one. During this week's Supreme Court hearing, Donald Trump's legal team walked in really confident, but walked out facing some tough questions from the very justices that he appointed. The case was about his use of emergency powers to impose tariffs. But what unfolded went far beyond trade policy. And here's the twist. The sharpest criticism didn't come from liberals. It came from Trump's own justices. Check this out.
But I mean, and I think this is a question for the other side as well. It's two-facing. Yes, of course, tariffs and dealings with foreign powers, but the vehicle is imposition of taxes on Americans, and that has always been the core power of Congress. So to have the president's foreign affairs power trump that basic power for Congress seems to me to kind of at least neutralize between the two powers, the executive power and the legislative power.
Let me say 2 things in response to that. First, the notion that the taxes are all borne by Americans and are not borne by foreign producers whose goods are imported is empirically, there's no basis for that in the record. It's actually a mix.
Well, who pays the tariffs? If a tariff is imposed on automobiles, who pays them?
Typically there'd be regardless of who the importer of record is, there'd be a contract that would go along the sort of line of transfer that would allocate the tariff, and there'd be different. Sometimes the foreign producer would pay them. Sometimes the importer would bear the cost. The importer could be an American, could be a foreign company. A lot of times it's a wholly owned American subsidiary of a foreign corporation. So it gets allocated. The empirical estimates range from like 30% to 80% of like how much is.
Chief Justice John Roberts leaned forward and asked Trump's legal team a question that cut straight through the argument. If every trade imbalance is a national emergency, does that mean that the president can just bypass Congress entirely and just declare a war with anyone and just make a tariff for any reason? The room went silent, like you could almost hear the moment that his lawyer realized that there was not a good answer to this, because obviously not. That's how it was set up to begin with. And then came Justice Neil Gorsuch, another Trump pick, pressing even harder. Take a look at this moment.
Because you say we shouldn't be concerned because this is foreign affairs and the president has inherent authority, and so delegation off the books, more or less. And if that's true, what would prohibit Congress from just abdicating all responsibility to regulate foreign commerce, for that matter, declare war, to the president?
We don't contend that he could do that. If it did.
What's the reason to accept the notion that Congress can hand off the power to declare war to the president?
Well, we don't contend that. Again, that would
well, you do. You say it's unreviewable. There's no manageable standard, nothing to be done. And now I think tell me if I'm wrong. You backed off that position.
Maybe that's fair to say.
Okay, all right.
That would be that would really be an abdication, not a delegation.
Gorsuch warned that if the court accepted this logic, the presidency itself would become a lawmaking institution. That's not just a jab. That is a line in the sand. That is not the job of the president, even though that's what Trump wants it to be. So, what's really going on here? The law is at the center. The International Emergency Economic Powers Act was written during the Cold War to handle genuine national security threats, not trade disputes. Trump's team tried to stretch it as like a taffy until it snaps to try to justify billions of dollars in tariffs, claiming an economic emergency, as if the world just going on is enough reason for billions of dollars on China, billions of dollars on Canada, billions of dollars on Mexico. Not that we have war with any of these countries, it's just that he wanted to. The economic emergency was him just wanting to at the time. The justices did not buy his excuses.
We move now to the Supreme Court and a very important case heard today on President Trump's tariffs. The majority of justices appeared skeptical during oral arguments that the president can use a federal emergency power law passed back in the 1970s to unilaterally impose tariffs. Jan Crawford joins us now from outside the Supreme Court. Jan, what did we hear today, and how did that skepticism manifest?
Well, I mean, Major, it was a pretty rough sledding to get things going for the Solicitor General of the United States, John Sauer, who, of course, is representing the Trump administration here. You know, he's arguing, like you said, that 1977 law gives the president this authority because it says presidents can basically regulate imports when they declare there's a national emergency. And they're saying that's where tariff kind of comes in under regulating imports. But I mean, Major, within minutes of him getting to that podium and standing in front of all 9 justices, he ran into a united liberal.
Outside the courtroom, the reaction was instant too. Legal analysts called it a reality check for executive power. Even conservative commentators admitted that the court's skepticism showed cracks within Trump's own circle. House Republicans quietly began signaling support for reining in presidential trade authority.
It's a congressional power, not a presidential power to tax. And you want to say tariffs are not taxes, but that's exactly what they are. They're generating money from American citizens, revenue.
The exercise of the power is to impose tariffs, right? And the statute doesn't use the word tariffs.
Congress, as a practical matter, can't get this power back once it's handed it over to the president. It's a one-way ratchet toward the gradual but continual accretion of power in the executive branch and away from the people's elected representatives.
So with Sotomayor and the 2 other liberals and then those 2 conservatives, you got 5, right? I mean, it's pretty easy. 3 + 2 is 5. That's all.
If he can just install a tariff anytime, he wants that can be dangerous for our economy. At stake is what's known as the major questions doctrine, the idea that presidents can't use vague laws to make sweeping policy moves without Congress. If the court rules against Trump, it could permanently redefine the limits of presidential power.
Tariffs are so important. The decision in the Supreme Court would be devastating to our country if we got a negative, devastating if we got a negative decision. We thought we did very well yesterday. We hope that we did. I think it would be devastating for our country, but I also think that we'll have to develop a Game 2 plan. We'll see what happens. Most people tell me we did very well legally. The ones that don't want us to win are foreign countries that we are able now to do very well with. Those are the ones that fight it. Those are maybe people that hate our country. I think it's the most important case maybe in the history of our country.
However, Trump fired back, warning that stripping presidential power could wreck the economy somehow. He framed it as a do-or-die moment, claiming the court's decision could trigger financial ruin and undermine American competitiveness.
By the time my first year ends, we're going to have over $20 trillion of investment coming into the United States. It's unheard of. We have AI factories. We're leading China by a lot. We have cars and car plants coming in by more than we've ever had built before. All of that would go away if we lose the tariff case. So all of it would go away. So they're not giving the right numbers. It would be an economic disaster. It would be a national security disaster if we lost the case in the Supreme Court.
But business leaders, Walmart, Samsung, and others, all say that the chaos that was caused by the tariffs is not worth it, and it is not an actual protection for their business or for American purchasers and consumers. So, however you look at this, it's not good for this country. So, when you look back at this hearing, it wasn't just a legal debate. It was the system testing its own boundaries. Even Trump's justices seem to agree that no president, no matter who they are, stands above the law. They just have to defend him no matter what he does anyway. And the bigger point here is that it's not just about Trump. It's a warning for any president, for any person in a position of power thinking that they can stretch emergency powers however they want. Oh, I'm in this position of power. I'm the president. Oh, I'll just declare this an emergency and therefore I can do whatever I want. This can't remain so vague that you can just declare an emergency whenever you want, and then use emergency powers to again do whatever you want. That is not how power in democracy is supposed to work. The Congress, the courts, and even the markets all have a role to play, and they're watching very closely.